progress as far as Zambia is concerned. The government there has signed an agreement that paves the way for the development of a 1.1 billion US dollar crude oil refinery and energy complex in Ndola. That's the country's Copperbelt. The country's Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC, says the planned facility will process around 60,000 barrels per day. That's 60,000 barrels of crude oil. This would, in effect, provide enough refined products to cover the Southern Africa's nation's entire current fuel demand, and over and above that, there still remains a potential to export as well. For more on this, we joined on the line by the CEO of the Industrial Development Corporation, Mr. Cornwell Muleya. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Good to have you with us on African Business.
Well, thank you so much, Thami, for having us.
Now, certainly, perhaps let's start with what it is that motivated the IDC to partner with Fujian Qingxin Corporation on this $1.1 billion refinery project.
I think the project rose out of a need, really, for the country because our previous refinery closed in 2021. And therefore, since then, the private sector has been largely providing the fuel and energy supplies to the country. And that necessarily brought some kind of instability, not only in the supply chain, but also in the pricing, which was fluctuating according to the various, impact of the distribution chain. And also, secondly, because of the volatility in the price of the dollar.
And what economic impact do you, as the IDC, foresee for Zambia? I'm thinking of jobs, the impact on jobs, on the saving on fuel imports, the export potential, and just closing this gap, which, as you say, has been there since 2021.
First of all, the goal is really to bring energy security and self-sufficiency, so that at least we stop importing the product, and therefore there will be a saving on the foreign exchange and stability in the Zambian kwacha vis-a-vis the dollar. We estimate that we are going to create 3,000 jobs in the construction phase of the project, which is a period of 1 year with phase one. Eventually, the project will settle around 600 to 700 jobs, because of the high efficiency that we have on the technology that we are deploying on the refinery. Over and above that, the complex will contain a power station, and with 100 megawatts, set to feed the grid. So it's a broad-based industrial complex that will start the industrialization, and creation of an industrial complex, which will feed into other areas like the production of polyethylene and other such services.
You started there, Mr. Muleya, going into the timelines, with the number of jobs that will be created within a 1 year plan or 1 year span. Could you take us through that in more detail, from construction to commercial operation? What are the schedules that you've put in place for yourselves?
Yeah, the first schedule is phase one implementation, which means first we get the land and then we begin to construct the refinery. And thereafter, after we have done the footings and construction of the refinery, we bring in the setting up of the equipment, which is equipment installation. That is what would require about 2,000 to 3,000 people who will be coming to do that. So that process is expected to take us 1 year. That will give us the capacity to process at least 1.1 million of crude oil per year. There is a second phase, which will be the upgrade after that. So that process will take approximately 6 months to 7 months, which will then upgrade the facility to process at least 3 million tons of crude per year. So this is the timeline that we are giving ourselves. Obviously, after phase one, we will be able to start production with at least 60% of our requirements. And thereafter, when phase two is implemented, at least half a year later, up to 2 years, we'll be looking at more requirements than what we need at the current levels of our economy.
And where do you intend to be sourcing the crude oil from, the crude oil that you'll be processing?
Yeah, the supply chain really that we are organizing is from the Middle East. So we are looking at that region. Obviously, we have cast our net a bit wider into Africa as well. So there are preliminary discussions with some of our neighbors as to how that structure can be worked out. But basically what's guiding now is the current logistical chain, which would allow production to start early. And that's why we are working on the trusted routes through to the Middle East, because we have seamless connections to the Middle East through our neighbors, Tanzania.
And as we wrap up this afternoon, is there perhaps a possibility of you exploring broader partnerships with other infrastructure or refined product pipeline initiatives? I mean, you've mentioned some of them, and what really comes to mind is the Lobito-Lusaka pipeline, for example, or the Dangote refinery collaborations. Are those in place? Are those considerations?
Those considerations are being explored at the moment at various levels. But what we have in the primary project is the fact that we have found partners who are ready for us to move and implement very quickly to solve what we believe is a necessary step that we should take to lower the cost and bring about the capacity we require to improve the standard of living for the people of Zambia.
Mr. Cornwell Muleya, we thank you so much for your insight and your time this afternoon. Very much appreciated, sir.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right, that's the CEO of the Industrial Development Corporation in Zambia. The government there having signed a $1.1 billion crude oil refinery and energy complex agreement with the Chinese, he says, and that's going to be in Ndola. Certainly a prospective game changer for the country. It is exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time. Let's